Cameras are going live.
I thought about that. I'm like, I don't know. That he doesn't. I might come.
What do you like? Yell at Rob. Rob out there?
That's what you know, I mean.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I have it.
Do you need it?
I don't have it.
I'll send it to
I
you.
feel like we should probably all have each other, so. I mean, we do.
Yeah, he sent that to me. Can't open it up because internet's so bad here. It's still
Well, it kicked me off for a little while.
Still spinning.
Very sweet.
Hey, Dan, well, then, he's walking through the door.
Yeah. Sometimes that door can be tricky. You might want to make sure you get stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be. Well, the first time I did there, I thought I was thinking
Yeah.
You gotta turn that knob.
Oh,
I don't need that one. Especially now that you.
Just trying to get in there.
Oh, yeah.
The article that you proposed this
That's what I don't understand why.
Where do you so
That's outdated.
This was just, what, the article today.
Well, even after they updated, like Garden.
Oh, yeah, I did. He's with Dad. I gotcha.
And like North Knox was too. Here and I were trying to make sense of it. Like what? Yeah, I told.
Yeah.
You know that's kind
All right, everybody good? All right, we're gonna call the meeting to order. Apologize for the late start. We had an executive session that went a little bit long and getting our technology set up so we could stream this meeting. Took a minute, so let the record show that all members are present. And at this time, we'll stand and do the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, everybody has been presented with a copy of the minutes to review. Does anybody have any additions or corrections? If not, we'll let those stand as presented. Mrs. Browning, you have claims.
Make a motion to approve all claims and payrolls as submitted.
Have a motion to approve all claims and payrolls. I have a second for Mr. Omer. Anybody have any questions on those? If not, all in favor, raise your right hand. 7-0. Looks like we have some donations.
We have two donations for the board to officially accept this month. First, we have from the Davies County Community Foundation Teaching Innovator Grant, $250. That's going to Kim Condor and Rhiannon Fry at the Upper for Sweet Steps, transforming art to the real world. And then we also have a donation from True RX in the amount of $1,300 to Washington Primary Kindergarten, Read Across America supplies. And I know they're truly appreciative of that donation as well.
All right, no, I'll make an edit or a note that Teaching Innovator Grant came from our community foundation. We do have two community foundations in the county. All right, do I have a recommendation to approve the donations? I have a motion for that. From Mrs. Browning, second from Mr. Miller. Any other questions or comments other than our appreciation for both those donations that were made? All right, all in favor? 7-0. All right, we got some information reports tonight.
Yeah, first, our favorite part of the meeting. Appreciative of our partner, Habig Injury Law Firm, and Mr. Tim Cochran for their support with this initiative to recognize our staff, a few staff members each month. And so if you're here, if you would please stand. Our first recognition is for Leanne Dinkins, who's a bus driver. And she's been nominated by our transportation director, Kevin Byer. And Kevin writes, Leanne is a huge asset to Washington Community Schools. Leanne constantly goes above and beyond what is normally asked of a bus driver. Leanne helps with many of our athletic events and is loved and requested by many of our coaches. Most of her free time is spent driving athletic events and cheering on the Hatchet teams. She is also an assistant coach with our softball team. If transportation was ever in a pinch, she would be the one we would contact for assistance. Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you.
Next, we have Sherry Jones, who works in the cafeteria at Washington Intermediate with Sodexo. And she was nominated by the principal, Caleb Cherry, and Mr. Cherry writes, Sherry Jones is an extraordinary individual and an invaluable asset to Washington Intermediate School. Her dedication, hard work, and unwavering commitment to the students and staff at Washington Intermediate are truly inspiring. Sherry has consistently demonstrated exceptional leadership and work ethic. During our recent building reconfiguration, she seamlessly adapted to the challenges and took on additional responsibilities without hesitation. Her ability to manage increased workloads while maintaining high standards of quality and service is commendable. One of Sherry's most admirable qualities is her unwavering dedication to our students and staff. She genuinely cares about the well-being of everyone in our school community and takes pride in providing for each and every one of them. Her positive attitude and infectious enthusiasm create a welcoming and supportive environment for her team. Even during her personal battle with cancer, Sherry's commitment to her work remains steadfast. Her resilience and determination are truly inspiring. Her ability to overcome adversity is a testament to her strength of character. Cannot imagine anyone else fulfilling her role with the same level of passion, expertise, and compassion as Ms. Sherry. Thank you, Sherry. Our next recognition goes to Whitney Albrecht, who's the secretary at Washington Upper Elementary, and she's been nominated by the principal, Rhiannon Fry. Mrs. Fry writes, Whitney is a true positive energy in our building. She handles day-to-day tasks with a level of care and enthusiasm that is rare to find. Always with a smile, she consistently goes above and beyond to assist everyone she interacts with. Her ability to run the day smoothly without any flaws makes her an indispensable part of our team. Thank you, Whitney. And our final recognition for this month goes to Sarah Kelso, who's a teacher at Washington High School. Sarah's been nominated by the principal, Mr. Holland. Mr. Holland writes, Mrs. Kelso is a special education teacher at Washington High School. She does a great job of relating with our students. The rapport she has built with the students enables her to have trusting relationships with them. She works hard to advocate for the students each day. She is a leader with our special education department and is a great role model for our younger teachers and our students. Mrs. Kelso is also a co-sponsor of the Beta Club. We are thrilled to have Mrs. Kelso working for the Washington Hatchets. Thank you, Sarah. And thanks to Mr. Cochran. Totally appreciate your support with this initiative.
Thank you very much. We're so happy to partner with you guys. I know, sorry if I can say.
Sure.
I know this time of the year, session is in up in Indianapolis. Obviously, stuff's happening on the federal level, but just know that there are people out there that really appreciate what everyone here does, and we're so happy to be able to show just a small part of that appreciation. So thank you so much. keep up the great work. It's not noticed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we have everyone come up for a photo with them?
He's got his AI or something. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much, Liz. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. The next item we have for our information report, I've invited Mrs. Murphy, the principal of Washington Primary, to come share about some initiatives that she and her team are planning for next school year.
Hello. So as you guys know, things run a little bit different at primary with having 400, 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds. And so in the past couple years, we've been throwing some ideas around. And so I think it's time to kind of bring them to fruition and present some of them to you guys to see if we can make a change at primary for the better. So first I want to talk to you about the K-5 program. So we visited Edgewood a couple times, and they have a K-5 program, and it provides support for students who are technically eligible for kindergarten, just may not be fully ready for that full kindergarten curriculum. There it goes. Okay. So this program is run like a kindergarten classroom. It has the same academic standards. It's building on those foundation that those students need to transition into the full curriculum of kindergarten, but it also provides some more time for the students to build those social and emotional skills that they need. We want to target those kids who are 5, but they may be that young 5. For example, my daughter Mabel, her birthday is July 16th. So she'll be eligible when it comes time for her to go to kindergarten because she'll be 5 by August 1st. But having that young July birthday, I may want to send her to another year of preschool or whatever that may look like instead of sending her to a full kindergarten day. So we would look at the eligibility criteria of those young 5-year-olds who can come to kindergarten, but are just a little younger. It would be a commitment on the parents' part because the curriculum is only going to be half the standards, so that we can focus more on the emotional and social part of what the students need. And so they would then commit to their child going to kindergarten the following year. So it would be a commitment on the parents' end. Selection can be based on the birth date, but also recommendations from preschool directors, and then our interaction with them as the teachers and the principal when they're in our building for registration or field trips that we're doing with different preschools. So that's how we would select our students. The goals of the program, like I said, aren't just on the academics, but they're on the social development as well. Encouraging that play-based learning, hands-on strategies. You know, those younger kiddos may lack the hand grip for proper pencil holding or balance for play. And so we can work all of that into our classroom to fit their needs. So the curriculum would focus on the literacy, math, social studies, and science components, but we would bring in the social and emotional learning as well as those motor skills, like I just said. The schedule would look the same as a kindergarten classroom, so they would still come at the same time, they would still leave at the same time, they still go to specials, lunch, all the same things. It would just be at a slower pace. So instead of all the kindergarten standards, like for example, one of the kindergarten standards is counting to 100. we would expect them to count to 50. So it's just less intense. They would still receive the same assessments kindergartners receive so that we can monitor them and their progress. They would still get the report cards, have the parent-teacher conferences. Teachers would still communicate that, have that communication piece with the parents. We would still allow the parents to come in and volunteer in the classroom. Everything would look the same, just at a slower pace. Looking at the logistics and staffing of it, it won't be that much different. This is something we would house at Washington Primary. We would take one of our kindergarten teachers that would have a regular kindergarten classroom and call them the K-5 teacher. We would like a maximum of 15 students in the classroom, just so those are the younger kiddos and the ones that you're focusing in on those social and emotional skills. So take that class size down to 15. And like I said, they would follow the same schedule that aligns to the district calendar. There's a lot of benefits that can come from this, not just academically and socially. It can also give the parent confidence in what their child is able to do and be successful. You know, I know a lot of parents don't like to think that far into the future, but your child could be graduating, you know, closer to 19 than they are just being freshly 18 and going into college. So it provides that confidence for the parent. I think it's an essential stepping stone for some of those children needing those developmental time and preparing them for the learning and success in those primary grades. Do you guys have any questions about the K-5 program?
I kind of got a question.
Yeah.
So what if you've got this parent, you're suggesting, hey, probably need to go into this young, but they insist on going into kindergarten. What if you're a month in and you see that it's not making track, probably would be better to do this? Is that a possibility to do that, or?
It is a possibility. It would still be with the parents' consent. Edgewood that we visited, they're not truly comparable to us just because they don't have the same population as we do. But they've had it go both ways. They've had it where a parent was insisting on their child be in this program and they were in the program and the teacher's like, they are just soaring, they're on track, they're where a kindergarten needs to be, and they've moved them out of the program into the general ed classroom. And then they've had the opposite, the parent where you know, no, I want them to go into general ed, full day kindergarten. It's what they need. And the teacher tries it and the student isn't having success, and then they move them into the program. So they've seen it go both ways. They just said it's a case by case basis. And I think we would see the same thing in our building. Yes.
Would you try to identify the students for this before school starts or a month into it? How does that look?
I think we would definitely identify those young ones. Okay. Those are pretty easy to identify with the birth dates. Our secretaries have already kind of started highlighting those really young birthdays just to kind of have our eyes on them and have a conversation with those parents. But I do think some of those 15 kiddos will be identified from the general ed classroom.
You may have touched on this. You're dedicating one classroom to that?
Currently,
okay.
Yes.
You have room for that? You have one extra classroom available?
Well, I think you know the answer to that. Any other questions?
No, I know this has been discussed for the last couple of years. We've been aware of it as well. And I think personally, I'm excited to see it move forward. I appreciate the work y'all have put into it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Next, I want to talk to you about staggered start. So when we switched to the primary building, I'll be honest, I was on maternity leave. And if you talk to some of these ladies out here who were in the building the first 3 months that we changed to primary is just a different beast than what the K-6 building was. And so with that, with having 400, 4, 5, 6, and eventually 7-year-olds in our building, our needs have changed for what our building needs. So I'm paired, my mentor through my principalship, and then my mentor now is one of the principals in Vincent's, and Vincent's implemented this staggered start, and it's done wonders for them. There's other corporations that have done it as well. So what staggered start is a slower start to your school year. So in doing a staggered start, it would allow us to have a smoother transition where smaller groups of students would alternate days. And this would help us with students finding their classroom, serving 400 kids lunch, and also getting home safely. If you've been in our building the first month, but the first week of school, getting those students to their classroom, knowing who their teacher is, even identifying themselves by their first name, getting them their lunch choices and having enough time to eat that lunch. And then either the car line or the bus line with 400 kids is a lot. It would allow us to foster those relationships deeper. Currently our dual language classrooms are sitting with 24 in them. Our general ed classrooms are sitting anywhere between 18 and 21. And they're trying to build that trust with those students and form those relationships with a teacher and that many students in a classroom. And that takes time. And so the goal with the staggered start would be that only half of them are in the room at a time. So one teacher for 10 kids can form that relationship a lot deeper in those first couple days of school than trying to form it with 20 kids. It would allow us to start our assessments where we can gauge where the students are. Not currently, but in the past, we have done a screener at kindergarten registration. Well, that screener is showing us where the students are in March, and we get those students in August, and that's not really an accurate picture of where those students were in March. So this would allow us to give those assessments in August and actually sort students based on where they actually are at the time. And then it allows those students to feel safe. Again, if you've been at primary in that first week of school, there are so many tears by the students, not so much by the teachers, maybe some. There's so many tears, and I think if we can implement this staggered start and just have this slower start to school, that so much more trust can be built. And not only can the kids feel safe and the relationships can be formed by the teachers, but the parents who are also struggling to drop off their little ones for the first time can feel confident that their students' needs are being met in those first couple days of school. So the proposed schedule, it would be if your last name starts with A through M, you would attend day 1, 3, and 5. If your last name starts with N through Z, you would attend day 2, 4, and 6. On day 7, no kindergarten students would come to school, and the teachers would use that time to take those classroom assessments and any other information that they've gathered during that time, observations, IEP meetings, anything like that, and then sort those students into classrooms based on the needs. So we can have a more split, even class load. And then day 8, all students would attend. So it is an inconvenience for parents. It does alter things a little bit for them, but it's a 4-day inconvenience for the benefits that I've already mentioned. Like I said, other schools have implemented this. In my research, EVSC has done it, Fort Wayne Community Schools, IPS. The assessments help us make the placement. And then a question that I've been asked a lot is, will transportation still be provided? And it's the same thing. They still come at the normal arrival time on the bus or in the car. They still leave the same way. They just don't come the certain days. So with this being said, I know it's going to be hard for families to hear. And what are we going to do? Daycare, who watches our kids? So I think getting this information out early to families to help them plan is very important. We've already figured out attendance tracking with Mr. Frank Skyward. He's reached out to the IDOE. There would have to be a vote from you guys because we would have to submit a separate calendar for our kindergarten students to be compliant with the state. The additional benefits, even though the new road has helped tremendously, it would create more manageable traffic. I think the load on our teachers in primary would, you would see a big difference from them in August. Those relationships are formed deeper, and I could just see the well-being of our teachers definitely change that month of August by implementing this. So I want to have an early communication plan. I already have things in the works with Tori with different documents that we are prepared to put out. Remind them through emails, the website, social media. Tori's great about that. And then send a lot of summer reminders as well. One thing I didn't mention before, on that day 6, when there's no, 7, when there's no students, we would have an open house that night, because it is important for the parents to meet who their teacher is going to be, see their classroom, and get all that information from the teacher. So our kindergarten open house would be delayed until that day. We would still host our first grade open house. Those parents can come in, bring the supplies, meet the teachers, see the school, but our kindergarten meet the teacher wouldn't be until August 14th. Now, with that being said, we're kind of doing our registration a little bit different this year, and we're hosting a full kindergarten parent night where we're inviting all families and incoming kindergartners to come in. We're going to do a presentation on the main facts about kindergarten in the 3 different languages. And then we've invited a whole group of people, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, transportation, the health department, Youth First, Family Health Center, Sodexo, for all of our kindergarten parents to learn information about what kindergarten is going to be about, where their bus stops are, what vaccines they need. So this isn't going to be the first time that parents are in our building. This is going to be the 2nd or 3rd time. So our hope is that they meet the teachers at kindergarten information night, and then throughout registration and things like that. So I think the staggered start schedule is designed to ensure that smooth transition, not only to support the teacher and the students' needs, but engage the families in their education as well and get it all rolling at a smooth start. Do you guys have any questions about the staggered start?
I think the only one that comes to my mind is how do you handle a student that goes ahead and comes on the bus the day they're not supposed to be there?
Well, what Vincent's does is they do keep them that day. They don't send them home. You know, I don't know that we would tell every parent that asked us, because then they would just send them all the days, which is what we're trying to avoid, so we can gain all this. But that's what Vincent says, is they just keep them for the day.
I don't think it'll be intentional. I just
Right.
It's gonna, especially these year 1. You know,
Yeah.
There's corporations that did this and then got away from it, and you know any?
With the amount of students you're dealing with, it sounds like a great opportunity to me to make things easier for that first week.
Yeah. And, you know, I've heard a couple different comments about staggered start and, oh, it's just going to help you divide your kids more evenly based on the data and your observations. I think the benefits go so much deeper than that. I mean, if the parent can truly drop their kid off and know, they're 1 of 10 that day, instead of 1 of 20 for the first 3 days, and the teachers, is actually going to be able to listen to all the things that student has to say and meet their needs, and they have extra time to eat their lunch, and they have extra time to go to the bathroom because we have half the amount of kids that day. I mean, I think that's just going to make a huge impact.
I think it's a great thing. I think it's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, okay, if we add this then as like another item on the business.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys good with that? Kristen, I don't know if you heard, but we're gonna add that into our approval later in the meeting.
Okay.
And the final item we have for information reports, Tim and Scott attended the ISBA legislation day up in Indianapolis on Tuesday, and Tim's gonna provide a report for us.
Yep, so I'll kind of break this down to some main topics we kind of heard while we were there. Kind of go to the main top 3. There was some House bills in reference to school board elections. You guys may have heard about that. So they're wanting us to kind of make a political affiliation when we run next time, right? Whatever. So we have to declare what you are, Republican, Democrat, or Independent. So that's kind of a lot of opposition from most school boards. There's several of these. It was kind of a split vote they had that day, didn't they? The day before.
26 to 24 in the
Yeah,
Senate.
that it passed.
It passed.
Yeah, passed. So it goes on to the House next. So we're kind of waiting on, to hear more about that. Our local senator, Mr. Basler, was in support of us and didn't think that was a good idea. So that's a good thing. And Senate Bill 287 is kind of the same thing. House Bill and Senate Bill are both kind of the same thing. The Senate Bill has a thing in there where, hate to say this, they're wanting to give us a raise, and I'm like, I don't think Scott and I either one were in favor of that too much, but I want to mention, not our idea coming from the Senate stuff. So if that does get passed for some reason, that didn't come from local school boards.
Their proposal is that along with declaring partisanship, you also will raise the pay for school board members to 10% of the beginning teacher pay, I think it was.
Yeah.
We did learn at that meeting that there are other boards that do get stipends and things like that. That's something that this board's never chose to do. And we stick with the flat $2,000 a year.
Right. Yeah. One thing to keep in mind is if either one of these passes, the Hatch Act would be in effect. So that would disallow anyone who has a job with federal government, right? So that being said, Randy, who was a postal worker for 20, on the board for 20 years, would not have been able to be a board member. So that's kind of how it affects people.
I think Senator Basler's point on that was like for this region, a lot of people that work at Crane.
Correct.
Like to be able to run for the board.
That is correct. Yeah. Several of them around the communities have those board members on there. So
there are some neighboring boards that would have a huge impact on because they have folks that work at Crane on their boards already.
Yeah. And then there's a Senate bill, the House bill also for property tax relief. Probably everybody's heard a lot about that. You hear that's great for you individually, but in a way that kind of hurts our school system. We've got a lot of different things that happen to occur because of that. One big thing that I got from it was the school referendums is included in this property tax bill. So it's going to put a stipulation on how often or when you can actually apply for a referendum, which is going to be during the general elections only and every 2 years. So that would put a damper on any kind of success or a referendum you want to put in place between then. They amended it for certain things, but those kind of big thing there. It kind of might have a bad outcome. There's the general obligation bonds, and I didn't actually see this when I read it, but the general obligation bonds, if this passes, there'll be a 2-year kind of cool down period. So once the expiration date occurs on a general obligation bond, you have to wait 2 years before you can renew it. So that's really not good news either. So several things in that bill that's not.
Did they talk about the why on that? Because with geo bonds, it's, if I understand right, they don't impact the tax rate, right?
Yeah,
They really didn't. No, they really didn't.
They didn't give a reason that made any sense to me, I guess. And we, Tim and I had a discussion with Senator Basler that our hands are tied on a lot of things as boards. Those are one of our tools to be able to do things like our most recent geo bond that is replacing the chiller at the high school and adding air conditioning at the upper. And we didn't see any kind of logic to why we would need to wait 2 years to be able to renew that if it's tax neutral.
ISBA is working pretty diligently. They've got a group of people up there all the time. They're working to add, further amendments in there to kind of help bring that damage and control, lessen the problems we'll have with the severity of our funding and stuff. So that is kind of good. I did have some numbers wrote down here, the latest numbers and what we were going to lose over the next 3 years. Again, these are just from a few days ago, but I think it changes daily. I think 2026 last time I saw it was, we would be negative 95,000 and some change. 2027 was 206,000. And then 2028 was 293,000. So like I say, that seems to change every day. So,
$500,000 in 3 years.
oh yeah, it's a significant amount of money. Yeah. Yeah. And then there was a House bill on special education, which requires us to have one employee in each school building trained in nonviolent crisis intervention. So that's something that in that special education bill that kind of come to my point that we're gonna have to have another person, and they don't talk about how do you fund that or anything. So that person's supposed to be able to de-escalate and restraint if needed. So. And then it also prohibits a school from preventing someone from recording a meeting over their student or something like that. So they would be allowed to do that now under that special education. Yeah. So, yeah, that they really don't seem like that's a very positive thing either for people. But
A student would be able to record?
a parent would be able to record any kind of confrontation they had based on behavior or anything like that. Yeah, during a meeting with the school official of some time. So. And then there was the teacher appreciation grants. They're looking at changing the criteria based on the tag stipends we get now. Yeah, that we just recently graded. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
They're wanting to change the criteria on that from how we do it currently to recognize, exemplary, and master. And there's certain stipend amounts based on each one of those ratings. And then what happens is over the grant, you're guaranteed to give that teacher for 2 years during that grant. But after that 2 years is up, you have to implement that into their salary.
Right.
Yeah. So that becomes a little bit of issues too and stuff.
Right.
Good for the teacher, but also kind of burdens it. Yeah. Could kind of make some funny between your peers and stuff too and stuff like that. That's supposed to replace our current tag with that one. That's kind of the big three things there we got. I brought my book. I got it the Stay Down, Stay Out, pass that around. If anybody wants to look at it or take it home and look at it, you're more than welcome to do that. It was a pretty good day. I really was impressed though with Mr. Basler. He was in support of us. So kind of keep that in mind that he is supportive of us in a way. And it did kind of come out of his mouth that when he first went into being a senator, he thought he could micromanage schools. But now he kind of sees that it needs to be done at the local level and stuff. So he's kind of aware of, hey, what's going on and should be put back at the local level. So I think a good advocate for schools. And there were several senators and House members there that were in support of schools and stuff, trying to help us out.
One thing I just want to clarify from your comments, Tim, specific to the teachers in the room, they are looking at cutting our funding, but it's not in the education fund, so it won't have an impact on your salaries. It's more in the operations where we'll have to make some choices on buses and
Lights.
heat. Now, the deal with the grants, that will be a change.
Yeah.
Sure, if they move forward with that. Their reasoning behind that was supposed to be a way to recognize those teachers that were going above and beyond, and they feel like it's been watered down to the point that it's just something everybody gets. I don't think that's a bad thing personally, but that was their reasoning.
Right.
All this, we've never done this before. One of the things the ISBA wants us to do is to have a legislative liaison. Let's talk about this more in our board meetings because by bringing this out. If you have a strong opinion, as a board, we're not trying to tell you who you need to contact or what opinion you need to have. But these are things that are happening, and if you have an opinion, we have local legislators, Shane Lindauer, Mr. Basler, get in touch with those folks. The only way their opinion changes is they hear our voice. So I appreciate you keeping notes and doing all that. Yes, sir.
What was so you said one of those was going to the house. Do you have that house number again? The
Which-
house bill number?
For which one?
For,
The partisan school board?
where they're adjusting the funding for like
Property
the
tax.
operations and stuff.
Oh, for the
Oh, that's
property taxes?
1001.
House Bill 1001.
You know,
Senate Bill 1 and House Bill 1001 are both of their versions of the budget. That always is their number one bill when they start. So that one, I don't remember them all by any means, but I do remember those numbers.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I think that does it for our information tonight.
That is.
Okay. Do we have any patron statements on our agenda topics? No. All right. We'll move on to personnel.
Under personnel, no retirements. We do have one resignation, Jared Davis, who's been an IT assistant. That's effective as of February 28th.
Okay, I have a recommendation to approve this resignation. Do I have a motion for that? Mr. Hedrick, second for Mr. Miller. Any questions on the resignation? If not, all in favor? 7-0. All right.
Next item under personnel would be some ECA appointments, mainly preparing for a few that we need to get in for the spring sports season. Just want me to read these all together? Okay.
I think so. If you guys are good with that.
Okay. We have Trey Miller for the high school head boys golf. Kurt Kelso and Tom Denny will split the junior high head boys golf. Noah Henson for junior high head boys track. Angel Mead for junior high assistant girls track. Derek Rhodes for junior high baseball coach. Leanne Martz for softball volunteer. TJ Fry for softball volunteer. And Autumn Humbaugh for softball volunteer.
Okay, I have a recommendation to approve these ECA appointments. Do I have a motion for Mr. Owner, second for Mr. Miller? Anybody have any questions? I saw in the notes there, Derek Rhodes is kind of changing. We had approved him previously, but making a change here.
Yeah.
That's the reason for this.
Right.
Okay, all in favor of approval? 7-0. All right.
Nothing else under personnel.
No old business,
No old business.
new business.
First item under new business, this month is the second reading of the provided policies. And if nobody has any questions, then I would recommend that we approve the policies as presented, and we'll get that updated into the Neola system.
Okay, I have a recommendation to approve the Neola policy updates. A motion from Mrs. Browning, a second from Mr. Hedrick. Anybody have any questions on the policy? If not, all in favor? 7-0.
Next item, we have a resolution to appoint the technical review committee. This will be the group that will work together to select the firm that will do our building project that we're moving forward on. Just to read those names out loud. We have Dusty Davis, who's serving as a local contractor. We have Nathan Gabbard, who's serving as a community representative. We have Graham Giesler, our facility manager. We have Tim Hedrick as a school board member. We have Kristen Murphy as a building administrator. We have Dr. Jason Omer as a school board member. And then I guess we should have had Daniel before this, but Daniel Rollins, who's the design criterion developer that we're working with, and will be leading this group through the process.
Okay, I have a recommendation to approve or to adopt, excuse me, this resolution to appoint the technical review committee. Do I have a motion for that from Mr. Cornelius? Second from Mr. Miller. Do I have any questions on the technical review committee? If not, all in favor? 7-0. And, yeah, we'll be there. Call it 6. All right, and before we leave, we do need everybody to sign the resolution, so don't get away.
Our first meeting for that is next Tuesday. Yeah, next Tuesday at 1, and it's a virtual meeting. We'll get that officially advertised tomorrow. So, this first meeting is open to the public. They can log on and observe. It'll mainly be Daniel giving an overview of the process, and then I think going over some dates with their availability later in the spring. So the next item is approving the appointment of Daniel Rollins as our design criteria consultant. A scope of work's been provided to the board. I would recommend that we approve this to have Daniel in this role.
Okay, I have a recommendation to approve the appointment of Daniel Rollins as our design criteria consultant. I have a motion for that. From Mr. Hedrick, second from Mr. Miller. We all met Mr. Rollins at one of our community meetings. Extensive knowledge of how design build works, and I think going to be a great asset to us, leading us through this process to get our builder selected and move forward. Anybody have any questions?
Well, yeah, what would be his, it's showing his fixed fee there. And then what would be his, the next column over, the approved additional services, what would that charge be?
So my understanding of that, and talking with him, that would be if we asked him to do something further, he would present us with a cost for that we would have to approve.
And this, as you page through that document, I mean, that's a pretty detailed, it's pretty granular with a lot of different actions that'll take place along the process. And from what I've seen so far with this, I feel like most of what we need him to do to get us is going to be covered in that upfront cost of $23,000. That others, just his hourly rate, if there was something that came up that was outside of the scope of this work that we were going to ask him to do.
And we would have to approve it before. I mean, we're not going to get a bill.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would be some kind of special circumstance that we'd have to come back and say, we need Daniel to do this for us, whatever that would be.
Very good question. Yeah. All right, anybody have anything else? If not, all in favor of approval, your right hand. 7-0.
Next, we have a series of student trips to approve. The first, I'm going to combine the first two because they're somewhat related and together. BPA and DECA, they're different weekends, but it's the state competition for those two organizations. The way we have that organized up at the high school, it's out of the business club. Mr. Hancock and Mr. Stoll lead those groups. Reason why both of those need to be board approved is because they're overnight trips. These are BPA and DECA state competition are two trips that WHS students have been doing for a long time, and both Mr. Hancock and Mr. Stoll have been involved with. So I would recommend for D and E, BPA and DECA, that those would be approved.
Okay, I have a recommendation to approve those two state conference trips. I have a motion from Mr. Cornelius, second from Mr. Miller. Anybody have any questions? I know our students do very well at these competitions too. So, looking forward to that. All in favor? 7-0.
Next, we have the FCCLA State Leadership Conference trip request, and this is an overnight trip to Muncie. And this is being led by our teacher, Mrs. Gupta. And it's scheduled for next week, and it's an overnight trip, so it does require board approval. I would recommend that we approve this trip request.
Recommendation to approve the FCCLA conference trip. Got a motion for that. Mrs. Browning, second from Mr. Miller. Anybody have any questions on that trip? Not, all in favor? 7-0. Robotics trip.
Okay, for high school robotics competition trip request, Mr. Riney has prepared this request. And the way he's done this is he's listed there's a kind of a regional competition before state up at Kokomo. There's the state competition on April 5th and the Worlds on April 20th. The state competition week, our teams have to do well enough at the Kokomo event. And I think they also take into consideration the event that we're hosting in terms of accumulating points. So if they score enough points, they get to go to state. And then if they do well enough at state, they could go to the Worlds, which is somewhere here in North America. But he's wanting to have board approval for all three because it's such a short time frame in between each of those. But they've done a good job. He has other WHS staff members that attend. And I would recommend that we approve the robotics trip request as presented.
Okay, I have a recommendation to approve, it looks like up to 3 trips for the robotics group. I have a motion for that from Mr. Homer, second from Mr. McCormick.
Break the ice.
All right.
I hope they go to all 3.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they have a good chance. It's an exciting group. Recommend anybody to come see their competition locally. I'm sure we'll hear more about that.
We'll do some information reporting on that in March.
Great. All right. All in favor of approval? 7-0. FFA.
The next trip request is from Ms. Knowling, our FFA teacher and advisor, and this is for the Indiana State Convention, which is in June up at Purdue. I would recommend that we approve this trip request for FFA to attend the state convention in June.
Is that an overnight?
It is overnight. Yes.
All right, I have a recommendation to approve the FFA state convention trip. Motion for that. Mr. Miller, second. Mr. Hedrick. Anybody got any questions on that? Go to a good place too. All in favor of approval? Easy there, Mr. Green.
All right.
Beta Nationals trip.
Beta Nationals, the Beta Club, led by our teachers, Mrs. Wilson and Mrs. Kelso, are requesting board approval to attend the Beta Nationals in Orlando, Florida. And that one's in June. And again, this is another one that's just kind of a routine. There's some history and tradition here. WHS attends the National Beta Convention every year. So I would recommend that and it's obviously overnight. So I would recommend that the board approves this request.
Okay, recommendation to approve Beta Nationals trip out of state overnight. I have a motion for that. Mr. Miller, second for Mrs. Browning. Anybody have any questions? All in favor? 7-0. The trips just keep getting bigger.
They do. Farther away. So the final trip request comes from Mrs. Myers, and she is wanting to be able to start advertising and recruiting kids and parents that would want to take a trip to France over spring break of 2027. And she has great experience of conducting these trips and has had a lot of success. Both of my kids attended the one in 23, maybe? Yeah, 23. They had just a wonderful time. So I would recommend that we approve the 2027 French trip so that Mrs. Myers can start all of the work and planning for it.
All right, I have a recommendation to approve the France trip request. I have a motion for that. Mrs. Browning, second for Mr. Hedrick. Anybody have any questions on that trip? All in favor? 7-0. Other.
So under other, and we'll update this so that it's reflected in the minutes, but the item that I would recommend to, for board approval is to approve the kindergarten, schedule for the start of the 25-26 school year that'll occur at Washington Primary. This isn't anything that we would need at Veal Elementary. Veal has one teacher, a smaller class, and it's just not something that's needed there. So this is specifically for Washington Primary. As Mrs. Murphy indicated, I did speak with a representative from the DOE and school accountability. They really weren't as concerned about it because it is kindergarten and, minute requirements and all that. They're just not really that concerned about it, but they did say that in terms of what we have to do with like Skyward and reporting, they suggested that we have an official primary building kindergarten schedule that shows how we're going to start the school year.
So basically it's a calendar, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, have a recommendation to approve a calendar schedule update for the primary kindergarten classes. I'm making sure I get this right, okay? A lot of things to say there. Do I have a motion for that? Mr. Cornelius, second. Mr. Hedrick. Anybody have any more questions? All in favor? 7-0. Thank you very much. All right. Is that it, brother?
That's it for new business.
Well, now at the time that we would take any patron statements on our non-agenda topics. Nobody signed up for that either. All right. Information items.
Information items. So for March, we will have an executive session starting at 6 o'clock before the regular board meeting. The regular board meeting will be at 7 o'clock for March.
All right. Anybody else have anything they'd like to bring before the board?
I wanted to give a shout out to Mrs. Zimick and Miss Missy at the upper elementary, their robotics team. One of their robotics teams got to go to, or they qualified for state last Saturday. So they was excited about that.
Good. I'd also like to commend the Lady Hatchets on another great season. I know it didn't end as they hoped, but still a lot to be proud of in that program. We had a couple wrestlers made it to semi-state. I'm very proud of that and that program. Yeah, our band's off to a pretty good start. Came in second at regionals that should qualify them to go to the World Championships in April. So that's good. They'll still be competing in state competitions for the next few weeks. Our high school boys team still active. We got senior night in a couple weeks here, it looks like.
Right.
So.
5 teams. 5 now.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Gonna recognize the 05 states. Yes, ma'am.
I was like waiting for the right time.
Are you still here?
I just want to say, Mr. McCormick, we are looking for JA volunteers for my 5th grade classrooms. Mr. McCormick started today, but I think that all of you would be fabulous, and we would welcome all of you to come in and be JA volunteers. If you need any more information or want to talk about schedule or anything, we're open to that. Get a hold of me, but we would love to have you guys. I think you would all be great. So Yeah, you can ask Mr. McCormick about any of it, even though he's old hat at the classroom stuff. The teacher doesn't leave, they're still there, so, yeah. Well, I'm just looking for myself.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, anybody have anything else? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Hedrick, second from Mr. Miller, all in favor? 7-0, meeting adjourned. Yeah, so basically-
That's what I wondered.